It is 2053. All artists are gone. Art is not made by hand anymore, but typed into a bar and generated by machines.
Well, actually it's the year 2023, but what seemed like it could be 30 years away is now becoming a reality. AI art. But is that really something to celebrate? The art community is understandably concerned. After all, there are a lot of problems with AI-generated art. But what are those? What will happen next? Is it really that bad, and what can you do about it? The first problem with AI art is that art loses its worth. Because if anyone can create art in seconds, it's just nothing special anymore. What it basically means is, if everyone is an artist, no one is. So if you're in the business of selling art, there might be some rough times ahead. Secondly, art will be difficult to distinguish. People will type different things into the image generators, yes, but there's a chance that a lot of AI art will look similar. This can become repetitive and, well, uninteresting over time. But it can get worse. People may not be able to distinguish AI art from human art at all anymore. In fact, something like this already happened this year, where someone entered an art contest with an AI-generated piece of art and just didn't tell anyone. And he won the first prize! And this leads me to the next problem, which is fraud. To see the severity of this, you need to understand how these image generators work. Basically, a machine is fed millions of images from artists until it starts to see patterns. The result is that the AI can basically recreate any art style. You could literally type in something like a futuristic city in the style of Da Vinci and get a believable result. In fact, these 4 examples were all created with the AI dall-e. It really doesn't take much to see how this can be a real problem. A sad example is the story of Sam Does Arts, a famous art YouTuber you probably know if you're watching this video. Some people on Reddit created and keep creating AI models specifically trained to recreate his art. And he basically can't do anything about it. Perhaps you can already see now, this stuff can probably replace a lot of people. And make no mistake, if a company can save money by using an AI instead of a human being, it will do it. In fact, AI art is already being used right now. A good example of that is a friend and fellow creator of mine who does a podcast called Schrott oder Schrein. Most of the covers of the last episodes were created with AI. Another example is how people are creating entire websites with beautiful designs in minutes, just with AI. It really is mind-blowing. Unfortunately, the make money fast crowd is already all over it as well. So basically there's lots of problems with AI art. But what will it all lead to in the future? Here's what I think will probably happen. First, many art jobs will vanish or be reduced. In the long run, it will probably be a lot more time efficient and cost effective for a company to use an AI for something that would take a human hours to do. This stems from the problem of automation, and it's not only a problem for artists, really. Software like ChatGPT can write all sorts of texts and program code and might even replace people in customer service. Then there's Google's Imagine Video, a software that can create videos out of text inputs. Then there are AI voices and deepfakes, which can basically copy any voice or actor. Couple that with actual robots and, well, science fiction is bound to become a reality sooner rather than later. The next thing that will happen is the commonization of art. Basically anyone will be able to create art or at least make beautiful pictures fast. As long as it's new and exciting to people, I suspect it will lead to an explosion in content. The internet will be flooded with new pictures and AI-generated art. As if Instagram, for example, wasn't overloaded already. I think it will just get more and more extreme. But once this novelty wears off, I think AI-generated images will become a normal tool people use every day. There will be some free sites like Google where you can just type something in and get a nice image back that you can then send to your friends and family, for example. Something like this will probably also be integrated into messengers like WhatsApp, for example, just like the little GIFs you can send. The third thing I predict is that AI art will become a separate art activity, just like digital art, for example. Some people like to do digital painting, some prefer colored pencils, some like oil painting or watercolors. And then there will be those who like to create AI art. To each his own. I do, however, think that AI art will quickly lose its appeal to normal artists just because it's so different from the activity they love. because you aren't really using a pen or something, you're just typing stuff into a keyboard. My next prediction is that the end product, the actual artwork, will become less important in the future. Maybe we will all be creating art just for the moment. German artist Mario Klingemann said, "I wonder if we are moving more and more toward making pictures just for the moment. That images like the Mona Lisa, which captivate people for centuries, no longer exist. Maybe you are lucky if you create a viral work of art this week and it's already forgotten next week. Maybe everything is just in flux now. And if the end product will be less important, maybe the creation process will be all the more important. Maybe it's not about the finished painting anymore, but about the artist. The human being behind it all, who's telling a story about the art and maybe gives you some glimpses behind the scenes. How the artwork was made and what was the thought process behind it. You know, the human element in it all. So maybe actual videos of you painting will become more and more interesting to people. And my final and somewhat daring prediction is that the concept of copyright will become a thing of the past. Now hold on a second. What? No, I really mean it. With the explosion of digital art content that's about to happen, how will anyone be able to control copyright issues anymore? The internet is full of thieves and fraud already anyway. But with AIs that spit out content in the style of famous artists in seconds, well, how many court cases are there going to be? Way too much to handle, I guess. Also, who owns the rights to these artificially created artworks? The artist whose style was copied? The person who's typing the stuff into the bar? Or the AI? Granted, I could be totally wrong about this. Companies like Disney or Warner Brothers will probably pull out all the stops to protect their characters, like Mickey Mouse or Batman. It could also be that the government steps in. It will probably be hard to regulate, and it could be too little too late. But there are things like the Artificial Intelligence Act of the European Union. Nothing's set in stone yet, but there's bound to be some type of regulation. Or at least attempts at that. Now, I know this all sounds scary in a way, but it's not all bad. Why? Well, I think much of the initial bad reaction of people is the same thing that always happens when a new technology appears. Resistance to change. And this resistance is largely based on fear. You see, this is not the first time that new technologies have threatened artists. When photography was invented in the 19th century, a lot of artists were frightened. To make a picture of the real world, you could just take a photo now, instead of painting it for hours. Yet, art hasn't really died at all. Photography has become its own art form. Another example is when Adobe Photoshop came in the 1990s. This software had so many possibilities that threatened artists. Yet, photo manipulations and digital art became its own art form as well. You can even argue that software like this made today's jobs in the art and design industry possible at all. So there are digital painters, photo manipulators, and now there will be people creating AI images. But there are still people painting on a canvas. And there always will be. For artists, it's really the process that leads to fulfillment, and not just the final result. That's why we deliberately make our lives harder to paint something instead of just generating an image. To overcome a challenge, to get the feeling of having created something, and to be proud of ourselves. And just like there will always be traditional painters, there will always be people that value handcrafted, real art and want to buy it. The second reason I think it's not all bad is because it's not as easy as it seems at first. Yes, you can theoretically just type a few words into a bar. But actually, the initial results are often quite bad if you don't know what you're doing. There are actually many intricate commands you need to know before it starts to look great, like --4 or something. And it can actually take people hours to tinker with the words to get it to look the way they want. And I think in many cases it will be almost impossible to get complete control over the outcome. So there will probably always be artists and designers needed to make adjustments. To paint over the result of an AI, or to retouch it in Photoshop until it looks right. And to do this well, you need to understand why something looks bad and how exactly to make it look good. So people with in-depth knowledge of art and design will still be needed. The third reason is simple: it's expensive. All these AI programs need an immense amount of computing power, and that costs a lot of money. So all these AI tools will probably not be free to use for long, and be kind of restricted to the people and companies that can afford them. And the final reason why I think it's time to be a little bit more optimistic is this. Automation is surely going to replace a lot of jobs in all industries. But what if unemployment keeps rising and more people are out of jobs? If the trend continues, there has to be something like universal basic income. In fact, OpenAI, the company behind many of these AI tools, are funding and running the largest experiment on universal basic income so far. So people are very aware of these problems, and maybe things aren't as bad as they seem. Now, finally, if you're an artist, what should you do now? I think this technology is here to stay. So if you're working or are going to work in the art or design industry, pay close attention to the developments in the AI sector. Learn about all these AI art tools. Try them out and try to understand how they work. Learn to use them and don't fear them. After all, that may soon be required of you as a working artist or designer anyway. But the most important thing is this: keep making art. Don't throw everything away just because a new technology is emerging. Build on what you've achieved so far and strive to get better and better. Don't fear the future and have fun.